Hey guys, today we are going to lay out some differences that we noticed between Korea and Japan when we were in Japan last summer. When we were in Japan, we did buy this handy dandy little notebook and we wrote down a whole bunch of the differences that we noticed, things that we thought were interesting. And so we're gonna read these back to you and what do we call this?
Some general differences between Korea and Japan.
Some general differences between Korea and Japan.
One of the first differences we noticed between Korea and Japan is that Japan has a lot more houses.
Lots of them.
Yeah, like in Korea there's tons of apartment buildings that are all super tall and just identical. Apartment, 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 apartment. But in Japan it felt like there were a lot more houses.
It was cool looking out and seeing each building looking different, as opposed to here in Korea when you go up in a tall building and you look out, you just see rows upon rows upon rows of identical looking buildings. Korea really does have a very dystopian feel if you're not used to it. Let's talk about some of the differences we noticed in the coffee shops, or as we call them here in Korea, cafes. You see, here in Korea, cafes are everywhere. You can pretty much find them on every corner, and Americanos are the order of the day. But in Japan, it was a lot harder for us to find coffee shops. I know because I'm a coffee addict, and we dedicated a good hour every day to try and find me some coffee.
Every time we thought we found a coffee shop, it was a hair salon.
Oh yeah.
What's about that?
I think here in Korea we've gotten used to super adorable coffee shops that they each have their own unique vibe, and there's like cutesy stuff. In contrast to the cutesy coffee shops here in Korea, in Japan the coffee shops tend to be, they weren't cute as much as they were like minimalistic 1950s diner.
We've been into several cafes, and so far in all of them there's been a very strong smoke smell, a little bit of gray smoke in the air, so you can smoke in cafes. So we've seen a couple of old guys sitting at a table, drinking their coffee in one hand, cigarette in the other. That's how we do it here.
In Korea, both of us can get full for like 7 to 10 USD. Like if we want to eat cheap, we can both be full off of that much money, and it's not even bad food. But in Japan, we found that it was really hard to find inexpensive food. It was very difficult for us to get full off of less than like $15 each. Yeah, and that was eating the very, very cheapest of all the cheap food that we could find. And when we did happen to find food, the portions seemed to be even smaller than they are here in Korea, which we thought Korean portions were smaller than they are in America, but then in Japan they're even smaller than they were in Korea, and they're a lot more expensive.
Here's American portion sizes, here's Korean portion sizes, and then like somewhere around here you've got Japanese portion sizes. You hear that people in Japan are really polite, but even hearing that so many times, when we went there, we were shocked at how polite people actually were. When you just go to like a convenience store and the person's smiling and bowing, and in Korea people are fairly polite to you when they at restaurants and cafes and stuff, but in Japan they were just over the top friendly, right?
Yeah. It was very strange.
It kind of blew us away how nice they were.
I liked it. I thought it was adorable.
It was really cute.
Another thing we really noticed about Japan was how there is way less pollution there. The air is so clean. And coming from Korea, that is a huge change, because we go through phases in Korea where you're not even supposed to go outside because the dust and the pollution is just so bad. You have to keep all your windows closed and sweep your house like a ton every day.
The pollution makes it so that there aren't really clouds here. We have clouds occasionally, but you don't get the big billowing cumulonimbus and stuff. In Japan, the sky popped so much. The blue was so blue and the clouds were so crisp and the sunsets and everything were so pure and vibrant.
It was really nice.
It was wonderful. Yeah. Sometimes Korea looks like Mordor.
A little bit, actually.
We love you, Korea, but sometimes it is terrible. So something else that stood out to us about Japan versus Korea was that in Japan, it really feels like all the infrastructure came out of the 1950s or 60s. The first thing we noticed when we got there was that the subways feel really, really old. The taxis look super vintage.
They're so
and
cute.
They're really cute. The buildings are super vintage. The buses are super vintage. Yeah, it really felt kind of like we had stepped back in time.
It's different because I feel like Korea, like all of their transportation is made to look super modern. Like all their trains, and then going there it was like, really
it was kind of threw us for a loop. We weren't expecting it because of how everyone always talks about how technologically advanced Japan is. So it did feel kind of like taking a step back in time in just the way that everything looked.
In Japan, I noticed a lot more bikers. It seemed almost like the bike was a family car because I'd see like this little Japanese mom and she'd have her 2-year-old on the back and her like 6-month-old in the front. I saw this all the time. So I feel like maybe that's the way they get around a lot more. Instead of owning a car, they just own a bicycle and they bike to work, they bike to school, they drop their kids off using their bike, their little family bike. Like I see a lot of people biking in Korea, but usually just for exercise or on the weekend I'll see a lot of couples tandem biking and stuff. But in Japan, I saw them actually using it as a means of transportation.
In Korea, you can pretty much always find someone who speaks some level of English. And so you're not going to be stranded because if you go to a restaurant or a cafe, someone will be there who can interpret something for you and point you in the right direction. Also on the subways, everything's in English. Most buses are English as well. Most restaurants have menus in English, especially in Seoul. Also, the subways will speak English to you when you get to a stop to let you know what stop you're at. All of this is in stark contrast to Japan, where when we landed, we were very surprised to find that the English level is very low compared to Korea. I think we only met a few cafe and restaurant workers who spoke English, and a lot of people didn't speak English when we asked them for help. And the worst part of all of it was that the English in public transportation is really lacking. Some subway stations had English, others did not. Some maps had English, others did not. And this made it a big hassle whenever we tried to ride the trains or the buses. There were quite a number of times where we just had to make an educated guess about which direction to head in, and we were lucky because I don't think we ever got lost, right?
Yeah, I don't think we got lost.
Yeah. So all our guesses turned out to be correct, but we did have to make guesses. So if you do go to Japan, do be aware that it is difficult to navigate as an English speaker if you don't speak any Japanese. Of course, don't let that deter you. We were just fine and didn't get lost at all, so I don't think you will either. Then again, if you want a place where you will be completely comfortable as an English speaker, Korea is an incredible country to visit for that because there is just so much English here that it is great if that's what you're looking for. Is that it? Wrap it up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have lived in either Korea or Japan, do let us know what differences you noticed down in the comments. And if you have any questions about visiting Korea or Japan, drop those down there as well. I will be happy to answer them. And if I don't, Grace will.
As always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, as well as subscribe down below so that you can get more travel in your life.
That's always a good thing. We will see you next time. Peace.
Oh!
All right, that's done.